So, you get one. Thank you. So, interesting.
All right, so who gave $100? No, not who. Somebody gave $100, yes?
Some interesting stuff. So, somebody paid $50. So somebody just,
one person.
So one person tipped the scale. Actually, without that 50, we would have been right under $70 by $3. So somebody just benefited the whole group. No, this is very interesting.
So 11 people didn't pay anything, on average.
A lot. So how many total paid? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 20 people paid. So there's 8 people. Maybe they don't have Venmo or something.
So at least
It's amazing.
Never done a game theory game before.
Yeah. So talk to us about game theory. How,
Game theory is the whole premise of Bitcoin in the first place. It's the whole, the whatever, general, whatever. If you know that you stand to gain and you're operating completely logically, then you will put in whatever needs to be put in to get the minimum gain. If you are aware that other people operate irrationally, then you will adjust based on basically reading the room and trying to figure out how rational versus emotional are these people. Because if you were completely rational, then you would put in exactly $2.50. If you recognize that most people are not rational and most people can't do math, then you would put in between $3 and $4. If you had a very, very pessimistic view of people in this room, then you might put in nothing. And if you are just curious, but you don't really understand the math of the problem, then you might put in $1. But you'd have to understand that for all of the people that are only putting in $1, somebody has to be putting in the $3 or $4. So the $3 or $4 people are the people that expect that enough people are smart enough to understand the problem that they would be willing to put in $3 or $4 and not $2.50 so that they can actually get the fund.
yeah. Oh, great description. That was beautiful. So I want to go back to the original question and have a discussion. Part of the point of this is it is actually pretty hard. Like, how do you feel about the 8 people who didn't contribute and just got $5? Maybe we don't care too much.
It's expected.
Yeah.
Everybody knew that. Everybody bought in with that.
Yeah. But in comment back here.
Always work. I sent some to Elon Musk and he never sent it back.
I don't know how to respond to that, but for what it is. So one of the ideas, though, is that it gets pretty hard to coordinate when there's a lot of people. And so this idea of creating a global organization, there's like structures in the world already that are familiar to coordinate nations. There's governments, and there's kind of a model that works more or less. There's structures in place to manage corporations. And there's pros and cons to different types of the organizational structure. So one of the things that I think is exciting about DAOs is it's kind of a blank slate. It's a new organization type. It's like, how do we develop an organization that doesn't have some of the negative side effects of a soul-sucking corporation, or like a government that's kind of like overbloated government or something. And so it's really exciting, I think, to think about DAOs and how do you coordinate people globally across millions and millions of people, that don't don't necessarily know each other. So again, fascinating problem. I'd be interested to hear people's thoughts, like, especially if you're in a DAO. Like, what's different in your DAO than it is in a corporation? Or what's different about Utah DAO than the state government?
State government has authority.
They have a police force.
The state government has
It
power.
depends on the goals of the DAO too, because I can say right now that the goals of the Utah DAO are not to replace the state government, right?
Yeah.
We're really about uniting the blockchain community in Utah and kind of gathering resources, organizing them better. We're also talking about promoting sensible legislation around crypto and helping lawmakers become more educated, things like that. So it kind of depends a lot on what the DAO's trying to do.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, like, we are part of corporations and we're also part of nations. These are not necessarily mutually exclusive. And there's a cool opportunity, with blockchain technology and communication, again, to sort of reshape what does an organization look like. Comment.
Yeah, so sorry, I'm the boomer in the room, I guess. But let's just go back to that. So a decentralized organization is great as long as the organization in whole has the greater good of the organization in mind, right? There's a book called Wisdom of Crowds, right? That says if you get enough people there, their decisions are going to be more correct than the experts over time. It doesn't matter their background. However, you also see cities right now across the U.S., and not to get political, but people voting to defund police departments. Is that really in the better good for the people, or is that a group of people who have a large vocal voice that are convincing others to act against their own self-interest because of a theory or a philosophy that they bought into, right? That all police are bad. So you get this situation now where you get the refunding of police because they realize, hey, that wasn't that great of an idea.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're talking about a decentralized organization, the question I have is, how do you get the organization itself to act in the greater good if there is a strong philosophy that is acting against the greater good for the organization?
Yeah, I love that question. Carl.
Yeah, so one quick thing I want to say is I want to put in a plug, first of all, for the conference that I'm organizing next month because
Yes.
it's all about this topic.
Looks
right?
so cool.
So please grab one of these free boxes of mints up in the back here, the address to check out the conference and register. We're going to have some experts who are going to come in to talk about this. But one thing I wanted to say is that we've traditionally talked about the question of governance around, like, it's a choice between chaos on the one hand and tyranny on the other, right? And I think that what blockchain technology does is it allows us to create guardrails that allow people and communities to behave in their own self-interest without endangering the commons, right? So in the past, we've had this freeloader problem, which we just experienced right here, right? The freeloader problem. And another word for that freeloader problem is the tragedy of the commons, which is the idea that if everybody just takes a little bit more than what will allow whatever public resource you're talking about will allow that to function and continue to work. If they take too much of it, then eventually everything breaks down, right? But we no longer have this dichotomy between chaos and tyranny with blockchain. Blockchain allows us to create guardrails and code that enforces certain rules and ways of doing things, whatever the DAO wants to define, that allows us to choose some kind of middle ground in between those two extremes, right? And it still has lots of problems, and it's still in like a total early phase, but it no longer makes sense to have these age-old debates about it because the options are a lot broader than they used to be, right? That's the main point.
Yeah, no, I love that. And kind of going back to the title of my talk, how we think about DAOs and some of these problems, at least framing some of the problems, we call it mobs, mazes, and markets. You mentioned like a mob. If there's sort of an ideology that people are just following blindly, can cause problems. kind of consider that a mob, right? If there's a huge number of people that are just going kind of blindly in one direction, it's a problem. Mazes, this is maybe, you think of a corporation. Some corporations get very hierarchical. People are not acting in the best interest of the corporation because they're trying to impress their boss, and they're just trying to navigate this hierarchical maze. In markets is kind of what Carl just described, where if you can set up a system where people are kind of incentivized to act in their own best interest, then you can get the wisdom of crowds. If you can capture sort of the intentions of individual people and roll those up in the right way, you can start to, I guess this is our theory. We also think that, it depends a lot on the size as well. So anyway, other comments about the game or other thoughts about hey, if you could create a global organization, what would it look like? Over here.
I used to be a purist and get as decentralized as possible, and then I started experiencing some high levels of decentralization, and I was like, this is actually too far.
Yeah.
And I'm I don't want to deal with 40 kinds of stable coins. I just kind of want to have one or two. Just too many, because you got to pay someone, and you're okay, you don't want this stable coin, or you don't accept that one, and so it's this we introduce some standards, kind of like they did with ERC20, this one just goes big token standards. Just
Yep.
just not really.
Yeah, over here.
I also think a unique proposition that DAOs solve is the distribution of wealth, especially in these corporations.
Mm-hmm.
Few people get to experience the wealth that they build. I think that's something that's very unique about a DAO.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. I love this idea of it can go too far, the decentralization can go too far. I don't know where the line is. And just this idea of DAOs really are changing the power structure, providing a new type of organization for sure. I think you had your hand up, and then we can go over here.
I was just going to say, decentralization's never been the goal.
At least not for me. It's always been about doing things voluntarily. So a lot of the problems that libertarians or anarchists would have with the state is not what the state does or even how the state does it. It's that they're the only ones that get to do it. So that's the nice thing about these DAOs, is that if you can basically make something that looks almost exactly like a government, but the fact that it's voluntary changes everything.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. You get into the psychology of psychology turns out as important, I think. Individual psychology. Let's go over here and then we'll come back here.
Yeah, just connecting this game back to what we're talking about. So I'm in a game theory class right now.
Oh, cool.
Pretty cool. So we study similar games. One is called the Stag Hunt game, and it's basically either everyone goes after the stag to win the stag, or if even one person deviates and goes after the hare, then no one that went after the stag will get the stag, and everyone who went after the hare will get the hare, but it's not as big a payoff as the stag. So looking at Nash Equilibriums, which is basically a steady state, what would be the steady state of this game? So I could only find two, and the first one is nobody invests, because then nobody loses anything, so no one's incentivized to deviate by investing, because then they'll just lose money. And the other steady state is that everyone invests exactly $250, because then everyone will have a positive payoff of $5 minus $250, and no one will be incentivized to invest less, because then you wouldn't meet the threshold, or invest more, because then you lose money. So knowing that there's two Nash equilibriums here, and we could say that the second one is better, where everyone invests rather than no one does. It's this is a coordination game where if you're allowed to coordinate, which you didn't let us do, but if you were, it would actually be beneficial, because we would choose the better Nash equilibrium. So I just think with DAOs, there's a lot of DAO tooling coming out now with helping the DAOs coordinate better in order to vote, and that's a positive thing, because it could potentially steer you towards a better equilibrium for the DAO.
Yeah, I love that. So what do you guys think would have happened if I would have said, you guys, pick a representative, you guys pick a representative, and the representatives get to determine how much to invest, and they can talk to each other. Then it's then it's easy, right?
You have one person pay, meet the threshold, and hand the money to everybody.
Yeah. It's it's pretty easy if you can get that communication happening. So thank you. That's a great point. Thought over here.
Well, this thought, my burning question is, did the person who gave in $50 do it to troll you for entertainment, or did they do it because they wanted everybody to have a good time?
I think
too many variables.
We'll never know. We will never know.
Whoever gave you 50 cost you 20.
I know. It benefited everybody, which is totally fine, actually.
I was hoping they'd speak up because I think it's somewhere right behind it.
Someone wants to dox themselves. They can, but no, you have to. No, that's very interesting because, and I think that fits really well with this comment that, like, actually the Nash Equilibrium is donate $250. And so there were a lot of variations, actually. Probably the majority that donated was around $250. There was quite a few threes. I think I got a 15 in there. And so somebody was willing to like sacrifice for some other benefit, not for their own personal interest. Because whoever donated the 50 or the 15 actually ended up losing money for the benefit of the group.
Which happens all the time.
Yeah, it happens.
Which is why life is not a game.
Yeah, because there's ongoing. Like they're thinking about, I want people, they have other motivations. So, anyway, any final thoughts about this? We can move on. So, a couple of thoughts, and this is going to get into a little bit more of like my opinion. So you can tune me out, or you can disagree with me, which I'd love to talk about it. I really like this quote. It's kind of cut off there in the middle by Nassim. Yeah, the Republicans. That's a sign. Nassim Nicholas Taleb. He's written some interesting books, Black Swan and a few others, but. He shared a quote that just sort of like helped me think about this a little bit, where he says, at his family and friends level, he's a socialist. At the local level, he's a Democrat. He wants the kind of the social good at this like next level of organization. And then, at the state level, the next level of organization wants fewer, maybe fewer goods. And then at the top level, it's going to be pretty much purely economic. And this gets into like how we think about a DAO, is that actually a lot of these tools that we have to organize people work, but they kind of break down when the organization gets too big. So for example, we'll talk a little bit about like our team. We have 7 core people on our team. And to figure out how we pay, we actually try to keep it a little bit like socialistic. We try to keep it pretty even. And if you're in the core team, you're pretty much going to get, there's some variations, and I'll show you how we do that. But it's like kind of everybody's in, and we're trying not to differentiate. We're trying to create that unity within the team and just like have each other's back. And that's hard to do when you get to 150 people. And so you probably have to like create some new forms of organization. And so anyway, any thoughts about this quote? Or yeah.
You just left off the last line. It should be at the individual level, I'm a dictator.
Well, so that's a good point. One of the glaring things for me that's interesting about this quote as well is what's not in there. So the individual dictator, you can also take it up one level. Like governments are not the biggest level of organization anymore. There's these global, like DAOs are emerging globally that are separate from governments. And it doesn't enter the quote, right? Go ahead.
Well, yeah.
I sense a sarcastic comment.
Up there, it should be anarchist.
Yeah, maybe the anarchists. It's true.
I agree.
Comment back
The
here.
thing I noticed is you talked about kind of at the low level was kind of the amount of good. At the lowest level, socialist, lots of good, and so on and so forth. And that seems to have a direct parallel with the amount of trust in the organization. Like in your family, you have a high level of trust.
Mm-hmm.
At a local level, you have a bigger impact. A little less trust, but you still want lots of good, the higher up. And so I think that's kind of the power of the DAO.
Yep.
And crypto is providing that trust in a trustless system allows for you to use that desire for good in a large number while still having that trust.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that. and it helps me to think about it because like, you know, when we're like forming like, how do we want to manage our team? You kind of want to like, back to this comment about too much decentralization. Like you don't want to make the transactions with your family trustless. It can cause damage, right? And like if each person in your family had their own token and you're like trading tokens to do chores or something, it's kind of weird. Whereas you can operate kind of as a little commune, as a family, where everybody's sharing resources because you trust people and you can do things the other way. So any other thoughts about this? How much time do I have? Okay. So we talked a little bit about mobs, mazes, and markets. I just want to go over some things, like probably mainly for the new people, just to understand, like, there is a proliferation of DAOs out there. It's really interesting to see which ones are succeeding, and it's just I think it's a really fun time to be in this space. So, you see there's like protocol DAOs. It's often what we think about when there's like a currency. So there's like Ethereum. A lot of these big protocols have a DAO to manage basically code changes and parameters within the protocol. There's investment DAOs, which was kind of the original DAO, was an investment DAO. Collector DAOs, grant DAOs, social DAOs. I could be wrong here, Carl, but I put Utah DAO under a social DAO, more or less, like common purpose ideology. There's agency DAOs and service DAOs and media DAOs. So again, there's kind of a proliferation of DAOs. This is where DAOs get pretty amorphous. I think some of the commonalities here are that almost always there's a token. And so being able to like tokenize your involvement in this organization is, I think, one of the innovations that allows to manage the investment. It allows to like elicit individual preferences and or preferences based on your investment in the DAO pretty cleanly. So thoughts, questions?
What Constitution DAO did in trying to beat out the venture capital fund to buy one of the 13 copies of the Constitution. I'm just really shocked that we're not seeing more of that. I'm just curious what other people's thoughts are. It's like, why not? We're not just seeing more of these opportunities like that. Right?
Yeah. Thoughts?
Well, I know they're transparency.
Carl?
There's one issue about secrecy, because like with Constitution DAO, their bid, actually not just their bid, but their entire treasury was visible on the blockchain. So anybody with enough money could know what their full point was, essentially.
Yeah, so they're going to get front run. And that's what Mike was just saying, is that the transparency hurt them and got them front run by like 2 million at the VC level.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a bit of a challenge. You could use something like some kind of zero knowledge proof to show that you had enough funds for something without revealing how many funds were there. But I would have to think harder about how to conceal the entire treasury that way,
Yep. Yeah, that's interesting. So there's some technical limitations for sure. I think it might come back to this comment over here as well about communication. Like, there has to be some form of communication and collaboration for the DAO to function, in my opinion. Let's go here and then over here.
I was going to mention in my first comment about what was the first DAO. I didn't mention it because I was wondering if you were going to have a slide like this. I was curious to see if you put Dash up here.
Yeah.
But I have to set the record straight to all my Utah friends here. I am part of the Dash DAO. The Dash DAO was the first DAO. So just have to set the record straight. At the layer 1 level, Dash does have voting, coin voting, and then paying out 10% of the block rewards to any random proposal that gets put forth. So just wanted to set the record straight there. The DAO wasn't actually the DAO.
I think Amanda Johnson, wasn't she the first to be?
Yeah.
She was the first to be what by a DAO?
She was the first person ever paid by a DAO.
Which was the Dash DAO.
Paid by the Dash DAO.
Yeah.
And so I emailed her. I was like, "Hey, you're the first person in the world to be paid by a DAO. Like, that's pretty cool."
So it's just a little trivia.
Yeah, I know.
Nobody gets it. Nobody remembers it. So.
Yeah, no, I'm a little embarrassed that I didn't know it. And I'm glad you're here to represent the original DAO. We have a original Taoist. That's really cool. Comment over here.
The D, the decentralized part of DAO, is often the one that takes the longest to put together, right? I mean, all the most successful DAOs generally started as small groups with strong leadership.
Yep.
And there was a vision that people gathered around, primarily put forth by maybe one or two individuals that started off that DAO. And so I think the reason why maybe we don't see it so much more is that it takes prolific leadership to get these things off the ground. But once they do, then they start to grow into themselves.
Yeah, exactly. That's been my observation as well, is that it kind of, again, evolves through takes some hierarchy, actually. Like you said, a strong leader sometimes to get things moving and to get things going. And then it if it needs to evolve as it grows, basically. Interesting. It could be another conversation, but I think the story of Vitalik is very fascinating because he's not like a dictator over Ethereum. Do you have a comment about that? Or was that just a hand motion? He's not a dictator over Ethereum, and he probably could have been. In a way, he sort of stepped back and let Ethereum go. In a way, we think about him as a little bit of a martyr. He's still a very powerful person, but he's not a dictator over Ethereum. So, any other thoughts, comments about this? I might get getting too into my own opinions, but let's take a look at some DAO tools. These. So again, this is maybe more for the people who are not as familiar with DAOs, but I thought it would be useful to walk through some of the tools that DAOs often use to help with the communication. And I'm not necessarily an expert either, so I'm very likely going to miss stuff, but just to give some overview, is what often happens is this is the Yearn governments. Who's familiar with Yearn? I didn't, but so this is a proposal on the Yearn governance forum. So it's just a normal forum. People can write up a proposal and stick it on the forum, and if it gets enough support, then it goes to Snapshot usually. I mean, there's other ways to vote. I'm sure you guys probably have your own, but more or less a way to vote for people, and then you can set the parameters. Like you might say, hey, you have to have a certain number of Yearn tokens in order to vote on this proposal. You have to be bought into the network somehow. Interestingly, this is a proposal. I'm fairly involved in a Y Academy, which was a Yearn proposal to help train new auditors, like a community thing. It's pretty cool. Again, and then it goes to often a lot of these protocols are using a tool called Snapshot, which is basically just a simple way to put this proposal up, put some criteria for how do you vote on this proposal. And again, usually you have to own some of the token. Some people are kind of moving to NFTs, which is kind of interesting. And there's, we'll look at a little NFT platform that has an integration with Snapshot. But then you can see down here that the proposal's written again, and you can see the actual addresses and how much they staked to vote for this proposal. So there's a lot of transparency. Questions about that? Is that useful, or is this just old news? Yeah.
Wait, so if you own Wi-Fi on Coinbase, they wouldn't count that towards your ownership. You have to move it to a wallet.
Yeah, you'd have to have your own wallet. Yep, your own Ethereum wallet.
And then they just query the blockchain to see who owns what.
Yeah, the blockchain's all transparent, and so once you connect your wallet, it can see all the coins that are in your wallet, and it knows whether you can use them or not.
So
This is actually where Dash we're terrible with the tooling. We have very rudimentary tooling. Ethereum is way better at this stuff. So I'm not sure when you say staked, this is how many tokens they've staked. What do you mean by staked? Does that just mean you have that many tokens and have that much voting power? Or do you actually lose money if it goes against your vote or something like that?
There's a lot of different ways to do it. I'm not familiar with all the ways. Some of the ways I've seen, usually it's just like you have to have the tokens, and you might lock them up during the vote, but you get them back. I've seen where you can like go against a proposal with tokens, and then you might lose some if you are wrong on either side. There's a lot of different ways to do it.
Snapshot, this says how many you have.
Yeah, Snapshot doesn't, but there are other tools like Colony is one where there's a little bit more sophisticated way that you can, put proposals, vote for them, disagree with them. Aragon is another one. Questions or comments about this? Yeah.
What's the requirement?
Yeah, so you can set that as a DAO. So your DAO will say, hey, we want X number of tokens staked. They can just set the requirements for what it takes to actually pass. And usually that's like written out. This is a good question.
What was the question?
How does it actually pass? So, I don't know. I'm actually not that familiar with Snapshot. We're still small, so we just vote in Discord. We will use Snapshot though, soon. Yeah, emojis. We always laugh because you can like change the parameters. You just go edit your thing and then it got voted for. But.
So when the vote outcome is like finished, is there a way to force that vote to have to be honored?
Yeah, so there's also kind of like this idea of like off-chain voting and then on-chain execution. There's new tools that are coming out that allow you to like bridge that gap automatically. Usually what happens is this gets passed and then the developers just get the thumbs up and they go implement the changes.
It's like a social indicator.
Yep.
There are protocols that actually
Do execute upon a successful vote. I think Decred does that.
Yeah, they're for sure out there. And they're more and more, I would say, they're like getting developed. So I mentioned, within our team, payment, I think, is one of the big questions about a DAO. And again, there's some interesting stuff coming out. We use a tool called Coordinate, which it's pretty cool. Again, it's still fairly early, and there's some issues, I think, with the economics, and there's some bugs. But overall, we really like it because what it does is it allows, you can see, we're actually in an active epic right now, where I get 100 give tokens a month, and I just say, hey, who do I think contributed the most this month? I think Big Bada Boom should get X tokens. And so everybody gives each other how much they think they contributed. Count them up at the end, and we just have a pot. We say we're going to give out X number of H2O tokens or Steam tokens this month. And based on the percentage of give tokens you get, that's how much you get. So kind of considered a fair way to do it.
Would you say Coordinate is a big DAO tool or a small DAO tool?
I mean, I think it's a small DAO tool. A lot of big DAOs are using it, and how it gets used. This is an interesting question. You get me sidetracked here for a while, but Coordinate split off from Yearn. Yearn uses Coordinate a lot, and what they do is they kind of distribute the budget through these different circles, is what they call them. Or they have one big circle, but they have different teams. People sort of like self-form into teams. One of the reasons we like it is, we'll take a look at our page in a minute. So this is our community page. Super early. This is like, no one's actually ever seen this yet. But those top three are like three different teams within Icewater working on different projects. H2O is sort of the core token. Boiling Point's actually a team out of the University of Chicago. We have a team of students from the financial mathematics program that are working on stuff. And then Frosty Apes is actually collaboration with Coordinate and this NFT platform to do some of the, incorporate some more stuff in there. And so our idea is that like these circles are for small teams, but we think that building on top of those small teams to build a bigger organization will help build a stronger organization. So we'll see how that works out. Did that answer the question? Any other thoughts on that? Mike's one of the...
Well, I'm a big believer that small teams function very different from big organizations. And that it's really important to be clear kind of like what role the different tools are serving. And I think that the DAO concept, it kind of applies better to really big organizations.
Yeah.
But our DAO is like really small and it functions a lot differently than like a million member kind of like mob would. But there's definitely like a place for all of those. And like the really interesting thing that is happening now is how these are being structured on top of each other in a way that avoids being like a traditional hierarchy.
Yeah.
Because just like, a traditional like power flowing from the top through a tree has major problems that I think that we see in corporations. Are we going to end up with that exact same thing in the crypto world, or is there some other alternative? That's, I think, the big TBD with DAOs.
Yeah.
For example, I thought it was rad how OpenSea's like, no, we're just not going to issue a token to distribute or governance anything. So like, I'll just have people just like run through the OpenSea list and issue a token to the OpenSea holders.
Looks rare.
So it's just so cool to see how people are just building on top of other people and just creating opportunities and incentives to migrate to where better opportunities are, possibly.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Just fascinating stuff going on. And it tends to be a little bit more fluid as well. Like people are contributing to multiple DAOs stuff. So, other questions? I like I said, we use an NFT platform as well. This is sort of newer-ish, but we also think that by providing like Boy Scout badges, basically, that you can strengthen the trust within an organization. And by having, just like representing your contribution to different DAOs can help, again, strengthen the trust and be a sign of credibility to the outside world. So it'd be interesting. I think LinkedIn, there's way cooler ways that you could do LinkedIn on the blockchain with NFTs. And again, we're trying to incorporate these NFTs back into Coordinate so that you can like see how much total give you've received, almost like an experience level, when you received it, if you were early in a project, and like give out NFTs based on your contribution to different projects so that you can kind of get a picture of who are these people in the community. Yeah.
So with Coordinate, from my understanding, are they able to scrape through Discord to see as well as like user engagement or activity? I think I've seen that.
Yeah, so I have seen tools like that. I think there's one called like Hive. I think the Hive ecosystem has something like that where they're looking at GitHub contributions and Discord contributions and stuff. Coordinate does not do that. It's just very simple, like give each other tokens and then that's how much you get. I think those are interesting. Again, for a small team, I think that would be more interesting for like a medium-sized team where you might know somebody, but you don't exactly know what they're doing. Maybe as some extra data to like know how people are contributing. Just my opinion. Whereas like if you're working on a team of 7, you kind of know what people are doing. You don't, and like if you count up their GitHub contributions, it's probably not going to be that accurate. So.
Make one comment on your previous tab with the 100 tokens that you could distribute.
The snapshot or the coordinate?
Probably the snap. Okay, so 100 gives. So you incentivize people to distribute these by giving them back the same amount, is what you said?
This is basically just like a percentage, right? Like you're saying, hey, these are all given out, and then it's just calculated into a percentage. And then the pot of what we're willing to give out is distributed based on that percentage.
So in other words, if I'm a user that's helping to distribute my 100 give tokens every period, I also receive some reward. Is that
Yeah.
And my comment was essentially that doing things like this can lead to trouble because you also have people who will game the system because these produce uneducated voting allowances. In other words, I can come to this and give everyone 10 tokens, and I take 10 seconds to do that. And I get a reward every month, and I create multiple accounts, and now I have a business giving rewards to your account, as opposed to having some regimen, some filtration that, okay, I vote on Wizard Brain, and then there's 3 questions about Wizard Brain that shows that I've done research to be knowledgeable enough to vote on them.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. Just a quick story, and then I'm going to show some code. I wanted to show something technical. I'm not especially technical, but we are show some things that we're doing. But comment on this in a story is basically my opinion is that this is only for small teams. Like if you get beyond where like you don't necessarily trust someone, there are ways to game this. And in fact, like the last epic was like right before Christmas, and one of our core developers just forgot to, allocate. And it turns out there's a big incentive to not allocate your tokens because it sort of like reduces your how much you get of the percentage. and so he actually ended up with the most tokens because he didn't distribute. So we just went back. We forked it in this case. We just went back and said, okay, distribute your tokens. And so anyway, I'm going to jump over to a couple of things. So like one of the interesting things is this is not actually on chain yet. But one of the interesting things that I see happening quite a bit is I'm actually signed in with MetaMask, but the transactions are not on chain. And they're working to get it on chain and stuff. But it's just an interesting phenomenon that you're kind of seeing these addresses become sort of like a identity provider. And so, for your DApps, we use, I'm actually going to go here first. Oh, where am I? Oh, here we go. So, like I said, I'm just showing some token code here. On our website, like there's plenty of libraries to like connect to your MetaMask wallet. And you can use that as an identity provider. So like, again, what I showed you on our website with the community, when I log in, I get my profile. And again, it knows me by my MetaMask account, even though we're actually just hitting APIs. We're just hitting like normal Web 2 APIs from Coordinape and from Galaxy to pull this information together to provide a richer data set around who's involved in our project. But we do use this kind of Web 3 connect to the MetaMask wallet and use that as the identity provider because that follows you around as well. So if you're interested, we use this one from Aragon. It's pretty easy just to plug in, pretty straightforward. It creates just like an account object when someone connects to their wallet, and then you can use that account object to authenticate in different parts of your website.
Is that only compatible with like Ethereum, EVM type chains, or what's the compatibility with this?
Yeah, I think this one's only Ethereum. It's only Ethereum. Actually, sorry. Yeah. Opinionated, it's only React, it's only Ethereum.
All right, so it's not even EVM, it's just Ethereum.
It'll connect to MetaMask, and so it works for anything that will connect to MetaMask. So EVM it will connect to. We mainly use MetaMask. I think it actually works with some other wallets as well, but we're going to keep it simple. Another interesting thing this is all front-end stuff. We're doing the basic Solidity, like Carl, building contracts and deploying contracts and everything. And there's actually quite a bit of interesting stuff built on top of that on the web interface of how you interact with the blockchain. So for example, we use Alchemy for our WebSockets. We found it to be more stable than Infura for what we're trying to do. This is really cool. We can we can basically like listen for events on our coin. So when someone makes any transaction on our coin, it sends an event to our website, and we can do stuff based on that. And so right now, we're running this game where we just relaunch our token on a testnet every 2 weeks, and people can come and trade, and if you win, you get some pre-launch tokens. And so we have a leaderboard that like every time someone transacts, whether it's on Sushi or wherever on the testnet, we get a little notification in our website, and we can like do some real-time updating based on anybody interacting with our token contract. So some pretty cool stuff. Again, this is similar to Infura. I think they have WebSockets as well. And I think with that, we're about up on time. So are there any final questions or thoughts?
Really odd question that I don't know if I can answer. I mean, maybe it's actually easy to answer, I don't know. But I thought of it way back in the beginning of the lecture. Is vulnerability to hacking a blockchain intrinsic to any like early stage blockchain?
Anybody have any thoughts? Over here.
Yes. Because yes. Because all of the algorithms have already been optimized. So if you develop a new algorithm that hasn't been optimized, then no. But as far as we have ASICs, meaning application-specific integrated circuits, so CPUs that are designed specifically for a particular type of hash, anything that is developed on that hash will be vulnerable at the beginning because you cannot amass enough community to launch it that a larger organization couldn't easily just overwrite the whole chain.
Is that play by?
I would actually disagree with that because that only really applies to proof of work type consensus mechanisms, right? Where
that's true.
I would say most new blockchains are now being built on a proof of stake mechanism.
Yep. I know nothing about it. I'm ignorant.
Anyway.
I think the answer is probably like security is really, really complex. I mean, you see people there was a protocol that got hacked through the front end. They didn't even do anything with the blockchain. They just like got somebody's password, got into the front end, and then mimicked their front end, just redirected traffic, and so that people were giving them their keys and they stole their money. There's like, I'd say yes, just because it's so complex that you never know until it's been battle tested, but not necessarily. I mean, especially if it's based on.
That's obvious, but then.
Yeah, but not necessarily.
There's many different vectors of attack, right? There's like contract risk, where there's just a bug in your contract that is exploitable. I'd say that's one of the biggest risks right now.
Yeah.
Is that you're launching Web3 applications that are based on smart contracts, and it's pretty difficult to write smart contracts in a way that is totally impenetrable. You got a threat model all the time to just make sure that you're anticipating all the different ways someone might try to attack your code.
Yeah.
Could be interesting to do a session or two on security, for sure. Yeah. It's fascinating. Like, so, any other final questions or comments? Oh, what? ETA? No. I think we just mentioned we're actually thinking about launching it as its own chain, like a subnet on Avalanche. That could push us back another, I don't know how long. We'll launch it when it's ready. We don't want to launch before it's ready, and we want to make sure it's secure and that the economics work and everything. So, yeah. Well, again, thank you guys. That was fun to. And thanks for going along with all my games and stuff. I thought that was pretty fun.